Well, it's a bit of a mixed bag this week. It's January the 2nd, 2020, and it's already shaping up to be a really exciting year.
Yeah, huge news this week. We got new guild crew coming. So, can you guess who it is?
We take a look at Caleb's Pahi 42 and have a look at a project boat. He bought it 2 years ago. He's been working hard on it ever since. Maybe he can help you decide whether a project boat's for you. At the end of that, we'll take you for a walk around Luckyfish, see what work's been going on there. Oh yeah, I had the surveyor in during the week. I should get his report next week. And in the meantime, keep an eye open for our launching. We're going to be doing it live on YouTube probably early next week. At this stage, we'll be announcing it on Patreon, also on Facebook. And as long as you've got notifications turned on YouTube, you should be able to join us.
Okay, let's head out to the water with Leah as he wears the life jacket for the first time.
We're just taking a lunch down to meet Caleb Wright. We thought this week we might do something a bit different and look at a couple of other Wharrams.
Whoa!
Wow. Hey Leo, what do you think about wearing a life jacket for the first time? They're not very comfortable, are they? But it might save your life.
But it's the vertical.
You can see the scale of it, just comparing it up.
For sure, yeah, it's bigger than the Tiki 38, that's for sure.
We bought the boat 2 years ago, and we had actually been interested in Wharrams for a while.
Yeah.
Seen a few videos, and I found out that Boatsmith is actually there in east part of Florida.
Yeah.
And my wife was talking to me about what kind of boat we wanted, and we stopped by and said hello.
Yes, yes.
And 2 hours later,
yeah, is that right?
we, after having a wonderful tour of a beautiful boat he was building, my wife said, I get it. I get why you like these boats. And, you know, she said, this is a good idea. And on the way out the door, he tells us, oh, well, you know, these do come up as projects occasionally. And I said, well, you know, I have a fairly long timeline until I'm able to go, and I don't mind projects. That's an opportunity to get one for a good price. So it also takes advantage of your labor and some other things.
Yes.
So we said, well, that's a great idea. If you hear of anything, let us know. And 45 minutes down the road, he said, oh, on Wharram & Friends, they listed a boat 45 minutes ago. It's the model of boat that you want for the sailing that you want to do. It's priced well. Be aggressive. Good luck. So a few weeks later, I find myself here with the builders, Jake and Kathy, and heard their story of building the boat in San Francisco.
Oh, you bought it from the builders?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah.
And they cruised it all the way down to the Panama Canal, through the Panama Canal, and made it back here to Rio Dulce. And we're just having a great time, but you know, eventually you end up with life forces that move you away from certain things. They recognized that, you know, it was time to let the boat go to a new owner. You know, we came to an agreement. So it was unfortunate timing for me because I had taken a hurricane disaster relief job.
Yes.
And we actually closed the deal after I'd been stationed in St. Croix, helping with Maria and Irma. And so I couldn't come back down to the boat for 6 months. So 6 months the boat was here in the yard, and we had people working to correct any minor rot that had occurred.
So was it in the water when you bought it, or was
it? Was.
It was.
It was. I have a beautiful photo right when I rolled up to it in the water, and there's beautiful palm trees behind and the tarps, and it looked perfect.
So you knew instantly that you were probably already sold, even though you were trying to keep a level head about it.
It was the love at first sight versus the engineering.
Yeah, the conflict.
Yes.
Well, you always got to follow your heart in the end, I think. Right.
You can never regret following your heart. She had been tied up over at the marina nearby, and she had lost her forward beam. A tourist had hung on the motors and knocked at least one of them off, and so they took them both off to get repaired. And when they found out how much they were going to cost, they just sold them for the parts because they had been well used at that point. So she didn't have any motors, and they had made some improvements or some modifications for the sailing where we sail, which I felt were a good direction. And we had the forward beam was not really a beam, it was just a piece of wood. The other beams had various states of issues from water ingress.
So these are all new beams we're looking at here, yeah?
The forward and aft beam are new, and the mast beam is new. Everything else was reworked. Stripped back down to bare wood.
Well, hang on, there's only 4 beams, so that's 3 of them are new, right?
Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You're missing the short beam in the middle.
Is there a short beam in the middle? Is
Sure,
there?
there's the mast step beam. So when the mast is stepped on this centerpiece here, and then the beam just aft of it is there.
Right there, yeah. We have one of those on the Tiki 38. Yeah, okay. I don't know much about Pahis. The feminine version of the Tiki, that's all I know. They said got some sweet curves.
That's exactly right. Well, you know, a lot of boating you know, ends up being fairly serious. People take their boats very seriously and they name them serious things. We wanted to be out having a good time and be friendly and happy and fun. And the curves of the Pahi were very appealing. We're gonna go. We're overbuilt and simple enough to modify things as we need to as we go, and we're gonna be fine and have a good time.
It's a doing boat.
Exactly. So the original plan were just open deck boards. And when I bought the boat, they had put part of the repurposed deck pod beneath the deck to store the dinghy and some other things in front of the deck pod, and it deflect waves somewhat. And we got into the cockpit and realized there'd been some water ingress, and so I took from one thing I like about the Wharrams, you can kind of build on the shoulders of giants. You can improve on them the way you'd like to be improved. So what I took that as is, you know, this is a good storage space. I wanted to add some more systems aboard, and I didn't want them to intrude in the living space. So this first beam here between the deck, the mast beam and this beam, ends up being the anchor and road storage underneath the windlass, and potentially some additional tankage depending on how much space I need for my windlass. But I think I could put a fuel tank there quite easily.
Sure.
And then this box that you see here is a weather-tight box that we fabricated to house the battery bank and the inverter and any other sort of water-sensitive electronics that we didn't necessarily want in the cabin. So that's what that's for. We have this main helm area that's the passage between the hulls. We've got the helm, our controls for our 2 outboards, and all of the electronics will get mounted in this box, as well as some of the switches for the navigation lights and otherwise. And then you can see the aft part of the cockpit, which was formerly 2 seats facing each other per the plans. When I got it, it was 1 seat facing forward with a little table in front, which was nice. But I didn't really like that it's hard to climb over the beam. My wife's not very tall, so she wouldn't have liked that. And also, we had a few things we wanted to have aboard. I like to cook, and my experience cooking on boats has been it's hot below, and tends to be a little seasick inspiring sometimes. So I decided that what I wanted to do was to use that aft part of the cockpit as a big square space on a boat, which is hard to find. And I wanted to put all the propane appliances so nobody wakes up dead. And that's it. So there's no propane going into any of the hulls. It'll house a brand new Dickinson stove we just picked up today. It'll hold a precision temp propane hot water heater for when we go into the colder climes up closer to home in the fall and winter. And then there'll be plenty of countertop space for preparing food, etc. al fresco. And then we have a 2-foot wide section at the end that you can't see. That's going to be flex space. So if we want to put extra coolers in there, or if we're living somewhere and maybe it's nice to have one of the portable laundry machines or ice maker, or whatever we don't know yet, there's space for that. We really like that. Behind that, we extended the rear platform a little bit.
Yeah.
So we've got a swim platform that's maybe 3 feet deep,
Yeah.
and we have the motors mounted on the Wharram design sleds that'll lower from there. And between the two motors, which we mounted fairly wide, we're going to have a 4-foot wide ramp that we're going to make out of some aluminum extrusions, and I think will be just perfect for the Tack-A-Cat to slide up underneath the rear beam, haul up out of the water, and be free. The below deck layout on the two hulls is slightly different but very similar. The very forward compartment, possibly in case you hit something, is a watertight storage locker which takes all the sails.
Yeah.
And then behind that we have on the starboard hull we have a double berth, which is quite comfortable, followed by nav station, some more countertops, oilskin locker, and then the head with the shower. And then behind that, the aft berth, which doesn't have sitting headroom, so it's probably going to end up being storage or space for children to stay in when we get here.
Right, yes, yes. And on the port side?
So the port side is very similar. We have the storage locker, the forward berth, and then this area is an area for a settee, or at least just a table. You sit up from both sides. That's convertible into more sleeping area, which is great. And then after that, we've got a little open area to set bags down, possibly house extra coolers and things for long passages if we decide to do that. And then the original galley is still down there, and so I'm going to repurpose that as a second head on the boat.
Right.
And we're using the Nature's Head composting toilets, so we don't have any tanks aboard, and I think that'll save us some weight and some trouble being in various situations. So that'll give us, well, it's basically a two-room boat. You've got a port and a starboard, and that's your one big stateroom on each side, and each one has its own bathroom. And if you think of it that way, it's a lot simpler.
Well, may we go below now?
Yes, you may. It's under construction, but come on down. These steps, when you have construction done in Guatemala, if you're not here to explain, they take a couple iterations. This is the second iteration, and there'll be a third. So they're a little tight. Hello!
Oh!
Look at Daddy.
Is this fun? You like boats, I can tell.
He's gonna draw on you.
This area gets a table. There was a table when I bought the boat. It got put in storage. There are termites here. The termites got the table. So now I get a new table.
Right.
This one will be of caoba, mahogany, and that's what I wanted. So it's nice. And that'll fold down into this position, and cushions will be available here. This will be the forward berth. That shelf they've started working on is where that 4,200 BTU air conditioner I found will go out of Fort Lauderdale, the Mad Brew Power Systems unit. And there'll be no
that's a 110 volt, so you'll run that off your 12 volt through an inverter, will you? Okay.
I found a nice grid tie Magnum inverter. And it's set up to supplement from the docks. If you have a brownout, it'll pull from your batteries. And it'll charge your batteries. So it's a combination charger inverter, which is very nice.
What's that? What brand?
Magnum.
Magnum, okay.
Yeah, they're out of the Northwest Seattle area, I believe. Maybe Oregon.
Yeah.
Forget exactly.
So you priced it out against the Victrons, and...
You know, I probably did not spend as much time looking at Victrons as I should have. Victrons seem to be very well regarded. Magnum does as well, maybe not so much in the marine industry. But as far as the rest of the industry goes, they seem to be very big. And they were US made, and I liked that. And, so that's what I bought.
Have you had to dig a lot of rod out of the boat?
Yes.
You have, really?
Yes. And, you know, there were a few areas we identified early on.
So what happened with the owner? I mean, that leads me to ask, what happened with the owner? I mean, what was their story that meant they, that meant that they let it go, you know?
Well, I think that they, like so many people, have a dream of sailing, and they get here, or they get out of their element where they're making some money, and they have ideas, but it's hard to make those ideas happen when you're one, having a lot of fun, and two, out of an economic zone that you have skills in.
Yeah.
So I think that that's pretty common for people, is that they go and they build up a kitty for cruising, and then they go cruise until they run out of money, and then they take the boat home, and you end up with time to build up the kitty again and go again. That's a nice cycle. It's a good balance.
Sounds familiar to us. Yes. Yeah.
But I think that this boat in particular, was not seaworthy, and was not, you know, able to be moved anywhere.
So they were based it in Guatemala for a number of years to date, and then they were absent for a while. Is that what happened? And then it deteriorated.
I don't know the exact details,
right.
But the gist of the story was that the time here versus the time to make money was out of balance as far as what needed to get done and the attention that needed to be paid. Because, you know, they built the boat, they loved the boat. They weren't going to just hand it over to somebody to build or to fix. They were here working on it.
Okay.
And so when you have the mindset that this is how it's going to happen, and we can't do that anymore because that's the way I want it to be, then that's the honest thing to do. And so I think they did the right thing.
Sold it.
Mm-hmm.
Did the right thing for the boat. Yeah, well, Dan did the same thing with Luckyfish. He didn't let it go though, but he said it was going to go. You know, he had a baby.
They want to sell the dream.
Yeah, well, he built the dream, and then he sold it for 18 months, and then they fell pregnant, and he realised that he wasn't going to have time to put into looking after a timber boat, so he put it on the market straight away. And of course, you know, we bought it when it was in primo nick, and you know, it's been our mission to keep it that way. You know.
Yeah, that's been great.
He built a good boat, and then he made a really responsible decision at the right time to get rid of it. You know,
it's hard to let go.
Yeah, that's right. It must have been so tough for him.
For somebody in more upper bracket income, these moorings deals where you buy a boat.
Sure.
That's a good deal.
I agree, Steve.
And
I've been plugging those things on our channel actually, and you know. Yeah, because you don't have to give up your job,
right? And
which is a huge sacrifice.
Yeah, and the best thing is if you get a captain to do your charters, and he'll look after your boat, and you'll have your engines are in good shape. You know, they don't wreck it out because they tend to wear them. When I worked for Sail Police, we had about 8 of one brand of boats, and we had one with no name on the back. And if we had been scavenging parts of one to fix all the others, and the owner was coming down, we just put his name on the back of that boat, and there's your boat. You know, swear to God, swear to God.
There's another one of Steve's stories that can't go to air.
Yeah.
As far as the rot goes in the boat, though, you know, the thing that was, you know, me being new to Wharrams, that was a bit of a surprise. Was I surveyed the boat and I found a few areas of rot, and we got quotes on those to be dealt with. And they were dealt with, and that was the bulk of the work, money-wise and time-wise.
Were they in common areas, like areas people looking at Tahis could look out for?
You know, well, beams or any place anybody put a hole in anything is important. But there are lots of other areas, corners where the boat may flex a little bit, or particularly where somebody may put glass over it and then think, oh, that's not round enough, and they sand it down, get back through the glass, and then you have no protection. So the point that I wanted to make was that when people come out to paint and they start sanding, that's when you find everything, because it could just be a little area this big, or it could be this big, but it's only going to take that first chip of paint for somebody to know that it's a problem. Yeah. And so it was a bit disheartening for me as I was trying to get kids out of high school and into college, and tried to work and support my family through my wife's military career and some other things, and do my own thing as an engineer and my own work, to come down here on a regular basis and think, oh, we're going to paint it this week. Oh, well, it didn't get painted because we found some more rot and they're fixing rot. And then you come down again in another month and they found some more rot. And they're all just small pieces, and it doesn't add up to much money because the wood is cheap and the labor is cheap and the boatyard is cheap. But when you're ready to knock it out of the park and go sailing, it's an exercise to know that it's the budget thing to do, and you have a boat that's in better shape if you take care of everything to start with.
A little kick in the guts when you want to go sailing, and it's just another step backwards. You keep going backwards for a while, don't you, when you start renovating a boat?
Yes, it's that 80-20 rule. 80% of it gets done in 20% of the time. The last 20% takes forever, and sooner or later you just have to say, well, maybe that doesn't actually have to happen. We were talking to Boatsmith. He said there's projects, and gave an example of somebody who picked up a boat for less than $20,000. And I said, well, that's a great idea. And he said, well, the guy who bought it spent a lot of time working on it, and he's a hard worker. So, you know, here you can find the same thing in a lot of places.
So you can find a big boat like a Pahi 42, or let's say a Tiki 38 for around the 20,000 mark, but with rot and with issues, and maybe needs new sails, and all the electronics will be out of date.
Right. So it depends on what you want. Do you want a boat you can take off with right now that's going to be okay, or do you want a boat that's going to be great, that's exactly the way you want it?
So to get the boat to this stage now, which is looking pretty close, I mean, you know, you've got final paint on over most of the boat. What do you reckon you put into it?
Well, you know, so we bought it for less than $20,000.
Yeah.
We put about the same amount into it in the boatyard, which over the 2 years it's been here, off and on with me visiting, and lots of work stoppages waiting for me to answer questions because my Spanish is bad. And then probably the same amount in engines and electronics and refrigerated coolers and
so perhaps another 40 sunk into it so far.
Yeah.
What do you reckon to get in the water now and you know, have the boat as you want it? What do you reckon you got left?
Not much.
Okay.
Not much at all.
So you're going to end up with a 42 footer for under 100 grand, easy as. in fully renovated condition, yes. Probably ready to go with a bit of touch up. Nothing more than a bit of touch up needed for the next 10 years. Pretty good value.
Absolutely.
Caleb, thank you very much. That's been a great tour, and hopefully the viewers have got some inspiration from your story. I'm sure they have. I'll take you for a walk around the hull, and you can see the ones that have turned up for this year. What we've got here is the hatch over the head, and it's a glassed over hatch, and the glass is just starting to delaminate around this hinge area. It's done so here. This side looks alright, but these are the sort of things we need to get onto straight away. The marvellous thing about the Wharram is you can just about maintain the entire boat with nothing more than hand tools, and that's the wonderful thing about dealing with a wooden boat. There's actually not too much that's beyond your reach when you come to fixing it without being dependent on other people. I'm just trying to feather this edge of the fiberglass back into the wood. It looks fairly solid right here, so it's just a matter of getting a bit of a beveled edge on it, so when I put the epoxy filler in to make up for the glass that's been removed, it all fares in nice and it's not going to delaminate again. We've done this several times over the last few years in different spots where the glass is lifted, and you know, no recurring problem. That's the main thing. When you fix something, you want to fix it once and that's it. When we come up to, I think, you know, I'm thinking around 10 years for an annual refit for this boat, like a major refit. Dismantle the hulls, pull the pod out, take the beams off, have a look at the beam troughs. You know, if she makes it through to 10 years without any need to do it earlier, I think that's a huge success. So these sort of areas can be looked at again, see how they're holding up. Maybe the whole hatch needs reglassing, maybe the whole hatch needs replacing. None of it's a big deal, it's all modular, it's all plywood and timber. There is a bit of labour hours involved, however, you know, my suspicion is that these sort of fixes are going to last for 20 years. Well, that's it really. I'm just going to hit this with a bit of denatured alcohol, get the water out of the wood and get it ready to put the epoxy filler in. Here's a fix on the same hatch that was done 2 years, maybe 3 years ago back in Grenada. And the key thing here is, you know, I opened it up with a hacksaw blade, got the epoxy in, and the crack hasn't reoccurred. So that's a process that's been repeated every year on this boat, not just the hatches of course, but all around the beams, on the hull sides, the top deck areas, anywhere where there's little dings or little cracks. We try to get onto them straight away. So yeah, most of those cracks I was showing you earlier, they've been opened up with a hacksaw blade to gouge out the deteriorated wood. Chisel if necessary for the bigger areas, a bit of sandpaper to get things ready for the filler. These are the side decks, either side of the engine boxes. I'm just touching them up. These hole areas where the hinges, rope hinges are lashed through, they were all pretty deteriorated. They are in constant use, of course. Every time we start and stop the engines, we open up these engine box lids. I'll just come around the other side and show you what I've done there. So there's about 80 holes in all. What I've done is drill each one out over size, put a bit of tape underneath it, and then filled it from the top all the way to the top with just pure epoxy resin. So yeah, just about an hour of drilling that out with probably a 3mm or 1/8 drill to take the black lashings that make up the hinges. And they should be good for, that looks like a fairly solid fix. That they should be good for another few years. Actually, some of these dings underneath the beam here, that's been touched up earlier. This one here, we picked that up at Roderick Wells. It's a common problem with catamarans, doesn't matter what model they are. When you go on a mooring, if they have steel rings or something hard on the top of the moorings, when there's no wind and no tide, the boat can just drift. And the mooring buoys drift under the boats at times, in between the hulls. And of course you rise and fall on the waves, and that's where the damage is done. These steel rings can bounce and bang. So once you hear that first thump inside the boat, you're generally out like a shot, tying the mooring buoy firmly fixed between the hulls, somewhere near the bows where it can't do any harm. Okay guys, that's all the time we have for this week. I've just put a new post up on the syndicated sailing site. Check out the link in the description. It describes the boat selection process for the Big Cat Syndicate. It's proving to be a real adventure before we even get to sail the boat. Also keep an eye open for the live Luckyfish launching next week.
Leave your comment and guesses about who that new girl crew might be.
And as always, a huge thanks to our patrons. Bye everybody.
Bye.
We got through it. Leo, you are a champ. High five.
Leave your comments and guesses. Leave your comments. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, 1, 2.
Good one, Leo.
3.
Do you want to say it, mate? Makes it easy, right? We just leave it to you.
Leave your guesses below.
Yeah, leave your guesses. I know who she
Okay.
is. You know who she is.
Okay.
And we're not.
Leah, behave. Just wave, okay? Be nice. Pretend to be good boy for a minute. People think you're a really good boy.
Hey, as always, a huge thanks to our patrons. See you all next week. Thanks everyone. Bye. Alright, one more time, okay? Let's do it. Let him go for it. And we'll just laugh if we have to.
Okay.
Okay guys, that's all the time. Okay.
Okay.
Restrain that child.
Where's the thing?
Yeah. What? Do you want Daddy's hat? Alright.
Wow, banana. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. And thank you for watching.